I am so thrilled that you are here today because I am about to share with you my proven process, my proven method that has worked for me on how to get out of a narcissistic relationship. It's really cool how this episode came about, actually, and why this episode is, it means so much to me already that you are here, that you have found it, because when I was in a narcissistic relationship, the last one that I was in, I didn't fully know how to get out of it. I was so frustrated because I knew I was in it. I've done a lot of therapy around it, a lot of research around it. I was very clear that this was my pattern. This was something that I was experiencing. I didn't know it until I knew it. Going into it, I didn't know it was a narcissistic relationship. But by the time I did realize and I knew it was time to get out, I didn't know exactly how to go about getting out of it. And so I started looking on Pinterest. I started Googling. I started looking at some other people who share about narcissistic relationships, and I could not find how to get out of the relationship. I remember I was in Mexico with one of my good girlfriends, and I had told her I was in a narcissistic relationship. And she had reminded me that it's so special to really know that I'm in the middle of the lesson and it's not something I'm learning in hindsight. I'm literally right smack dab in it. So how am I going to navigate it? I remember telling myself after talking with her that I was going to document it and figure out how to get out of this relationship. And so that is exactly what I have done. That is exactly what I have put together for you. And it is my intention, my hope that you really can benefit from what I'm about to share and really take the suggestions. So, what I discovered. If you haven't already, go through and watch the previous episode, because that tells you if you're in a narcissistic relationship or if you're starting to suspect that you might be in one or you know somebody that's in one. That will give you more of the details, the characteristics. This episode right now is for if you have discovered that you're in one and you are ready to get out of one. This is my 6-step process. So, number one is to decide. It sounds simple, it sounds basic, it's something I'm probably going to repeat in this episode multiple times because it's the most important key factor. I also work the 12 steps of recovery, and the first step is to admit you're powerless over whatever you are addicted to. If you don't do that first step, you can't do the other 11 steps. It will not work and you will relapse. If you want to stop relapsing in romantic relationships and you fully want to quit and go cold turkey and be done with this narcissistic relationship pattern or dynamic, you got to decide. You got to decide that you are fully done. The reason why, myself included, but other people stay in these narcissistic relationships and they're so addictive is because you haven't fully decided. You are still keeping the door open. You cannot have room for hope or a fantasy. Even with quitting drinking, the reason I would always go back to drinking was that there was still that hope and that fantasy of the small moments where I had fun or where things were going really good. It was always the moments then after that that I would forget or I would tune out or I would block out that it wasn't actually fun. It actually was causing disaster in my life. It's the same thing with this relationship. Maybe you had a few moments of dancing in the kitchen and it was so fun and they were buying you flowers and they told you that they wanted to marry you and that they loved you and all of these things. And so you're still holding on to that aspect of the relationship. But I guarantee if you're at this point and you are watching this video, you are now a pickle. You cannot go back to being a cucumber. It's not going to go back to that no matter how hard you try. I've worked with some clients who 3-4 years later, they still are coming back to me. They are still in these narcissistic relationships because they're not letting it go. They are still keeping the door open. With myself and my clients who fully decide and shut the door and work this first step of it, that is when the healing can occur. Something I want to share about this part is that it's not going to feel good. It's not going to feel good to decide. It's not going to feel good to go cold turkey. There will be withdrawal symptoms. You might feel despair. You might feel lonely. You might feel this desperation, this feeling like you're dying, which is one of the reasons why people keep going back, because the withdrawal is so great and so painful. that they would rather go back to the relationship or whatever they were trying to quit in order to get some relief from it. I want to say that this part is temporary. The withdrawal and the effects that you're going to feel from releasing this relationship are not going to last forever. I suggest that you ride it out and you allow yourself to feel like shit. Don't make yourself feel wrong for feeling like shit or for feeling heartbroken. That is normal. You are meant to feel that way. You are a human and you're releasing and letting go of something that you did experience some love with. So allow yourself to ride it out and allow yourself to feel bad. So decide. Do not hang on to any hope. If you are hanging on to any of this hope that there could be a possibility of the relationship getting better or going back to how it was, you're not going to be able to do the following steps. So come back to this when you are fully ready and you fully have decided. Once you have done that, then you are ready to move on to step 2. Step 2 is to actually not share or discuss this with friends or family. You want to make this a decision of your own. When you share with friends and family, they are already most of the times charmed by the narcissist. Some of them, they might see the narcissist stuff and agree that they are not a good person, but they might get sick of you constantly going back and forth. This is why now you get to come to terms with you're making the decision that you are done and you don't want to be swayed by anybody else's opinion. I remember for me, when I realized I was done with that last narcissistic relationship in my life, I had a friend who was very loving and she had great intentions, but she was just trying to help me to see his perspective or the positives of some of the things that he was doing. But that didn't matter. He could have been saying or doing all of the right things, but it didn't feel right within my body. Only my body and me, only I can know how I feel and when something's not right for me. Nobody else can tell me what's right for me and what's not right for me. So the important thing about this is just not allowing yourself to be swayed by other people's opinions or judgments or criticism or how great that they think that person is or thinking that you should work it out. Do not fall for it, because that's what opens up the door again. And then you start thinking of the hope and the possibility. You start thinking that if you just weren't as sensitive or didn't do something or did do something differently, that it can change. No. In recovery, we say when you're an alcoholic, it's like men who have lost their legs. No matter what, you can't grow new legs. No matter what, once you're in a narcissistic relationship, it's not going to change or become what you want, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you did or what you didn't do, or if you work really hard, it's not going to change. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. There might be a temporary relapse where you feel like you can handle it and you feel like it's good and the relationship feels all loving again, and then it goes right back into that cycle. It is just like an addiction. So number 2 is don't share it with people, your decision. Once you have fully decided though, and once you are so certain on this and you are ready to get out of this relationship, step 3 then is figuring out an exit strategy or an exit plan. Because you have decided, because you are so clear on this, you now then can start to figure out what action steps you're going to take. You might be living with this person. You might be financially dependent on this person. You might work with this person. There might be so many things, which are some of the main reasons why a lot of you guys stay in these relationships, is because of some form of dependency, right? At the root of all these relationships is some form of codependency. So we want to make sure that we can figure out an exit strategy. If God allows you to get in this situation, God or your higher power, whatever you call it, is going to help you get out of this situation. Here's the kicker of it, which is where a lot of people say they can't get out of it. I have kids with this person, or I'm fully financially dependent on this person. What I have learned and what I have noticed is no matter what, you can get out of the situation, but you might not like it, but it might be really hard, but it might feel really scary, but it might require a lot of money. There might be some kind of circumstance and situation that's going to make it feel really hard, but it's still possible. So you want to throw out the repetitive thought and belief and behavior of, I can't get out of it, I'm stuck and I'm trapped. You are never stuck, you are never trapped, but you might need to take certain actions that feel uncomfortable, that you might not want to do, but the possibility of getting out of the situation would happen if you followed that. So that's number 3, is figuring out your exit plan, your exit strategy. Once you have decided, once you know you are fully done with this relationship, there's no hope of salvaging it or sorting it out. It is fully done. You're releasing it. You're letting it go. You've come up with a plan. Number 4 is then to find an approach to getting out of this relationship where you can approach it in a very calm manner. Sometimes it might be best to do it over the phone. Sometimes it might be best to do it in a public place, especially if this person is physically abusive or very verbally or mentally abusive. You most likely do not want to be doing this face to face with them because you do not know their reaction. All you can control is your reaction. And most of the time they're going to poke and prod until you react. And that's when it can get so toxic and so dangerous. I've worked with clients and have helped them get out of narcissistic situations where they ended up being so triggered and so reactive that they threw things or they did something wrong, that then that guilted them into staying because they felt like they deserved it because they then were physical or they then reacted out of character. And that's one of the things that keeps them staying in it. So we want to change the situation and allow you to approach it in a very calm manner. With that relationship in particular that I got out of, I did it over the phone. I was going back and forth on this because, right, we hear in society all day long, how disrespectful is it? You can't even break up with me to my face. But also, how disrespectful is it, the kind of abuse that you're taking from this narcissistic relationship? I think that that applies to a healthier kind of relationship dynamic, not a narcissistic relationship dynamic, which is what we are talking about. So don't worry too about being respectful of how you are breaking up with that person because you feel like that's what you should do. That person was not thinking about any of that with you, of how they were treating you. So, but the reason why is you're doing this to protect yourself. You don't know how this person can react, and you don't want to get sucked back into this toxic cycle that never ends. So if a phone call is what you need to do, then so be it. Do what you need to do to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and you are not getting sucked back in. This is why, again, you do not talk about it with your friends and their family, only if they're really helping you with the exit strategy. But you don't want them to tell you how to break up with this person because they're not in the narcissistic dynamic. They don't know what is good for you and what is not good for you. So it's going to be important that you find the way that works for you. So what I had done when I was on this phone call was that I had decided I knew I was done. There was no room for him to persuade me. There was nothing he could have said or done. No matter how loving he was or how much he told me he was going to show up differently, it didn't matter because I had already decided. If I had gotten on that phone call, which I've done many, many times, and I wasn't fully clear that I was done, it's like deep down I wanted them to say or do something differently. They would do that on the phone or in the interaction, and I would get sucked right back into it. That's why I've had so many experiences of this and helped so many people that I am the expert here sharing with you because I have been through it. And I know what happens when you leave that door open. You will get sucked right back into it. Again, I've seen clients who come back to me and they didn't fully shut the door because they left the door open and they had small windows, periods of time where it got a little bit better. The guys or the partner said what they wanted to hear. And once they get you hooked back in, this is such a common thing of a narcissistic relationship. They hook you back in, they win your love and your trust. They said exactly what they needed to say to get you to come back because they're also very, very smart, brilliant people. They are very manipulative. They know exactly what to say and what to do. They hook you back in. But once you've already fallen or come back into the layer, then they go right back to their old ways of being. And then you think that you did something wrong or you weren't doing enough, and so on and so on and so on. So by the time you're getting to the phone call or to the breakup, however you're doing it, you must not even be able to be persuaded or shifted by this person. So you can approach it in a calm manner. I remember saying something like, in that morning, I used his spiritual jargon that, oh my gosh, something is so on my heart. I would love to just share it out with you. And something's really coming up. I've prayed on something a lot, right? You know your partner too. So you know what you need to say in order to have them open up and be willing for this conversation. So I knew what I needed to say. I got on the phone and I was so calm just sharing that I basically have prayed over this and I feel I cannot continue or move forward in the relationship. I'm so grateful for our time together, but it's time to release you. I remember this person in particular had told me that Oh, I so get it. I so understand. Just as long as, we can still keep our friendship and we both were in similar industries. So almost like the work dynamic and relationship, right? And that's where I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm not available to continue with that. And I remember he even shared with me that he wanted to still be able to text me sometimes. And it was like, okay, whatever. And we got off the phone and it felt great. This is the thing too. Sometimes it can feel great and you feel fine and that person reacts well, but then all hell breaks loose later. This was why I needed to immediately, when I got off the phone with that person, I needed to block him on all avenues, all platforms, because there's no room for him to then come back in and persuade me, especially when I get lonely or I feel upset or the heartbreak really kicks in and I'm like, was the relationship that bad? No, don't leave any room for that. And don't think that you're immature for blocking them. Again, this is not a normal relationship dynamic. This is one that is very detrimental to your mental health, your physical health, your well-being. There's no room to keep going back and forth with this kind of relationship because it's a form of an addiction and it's so painful and harmful to you. If I was talking to you about getting out of a normal, healthy-ish dynamic relationship, I might say something different, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about a narcissistic relationship where it's so vital that you do go no contact with them because you are weak and powerless to them coming back into your life and you don't want to give any room to it. Again, go back to step 3, where you're going to feel like shit after the breakup. That's normal. Even if they were treating you bad, it's not going to feel good because there were moments where you felt a lot of love or you had companionship or you had dependency. So allow yourself to grieve and to feel the pain. Don't allow them to come back into your life. I've done this many, many times. So have my clients. Nothing good will come out of it in the long run. And you'll keep staying in this perpetual cycle for years and years and years until you fully shut the door. Gosh, that was the best thing that I could have done. I was not even tempted once I had fully blocked that person and I approached the situation in such a calm and neutral space. Number 5 is don't defend or argue with this person. So this kind of relates to number 4 is staying calm, but number 5 is do not defend. Be open. So that person, there wasn't really argument, but I'm sharing number 5 because if there is an argument or it gets really heated, this is where this comes into place. Do not defend yourself or try to prove something or get all heated. That is their tactic and that is what they are trying to do. Now that you know this going into it, they might say things that are going to try to guilt you or things that you did that were wrong and that were bad. And it's going to make question your character and you're going to want to defend or prove your character and your reputation. There might be some fear that this person will then expose you to other family members and friends and you're trying your best to protect that. Let it all go. You have to let that all go. You have to let all pride and all ego go. And this is where you come back into connection with your higher power, that your higher power, God, the universe, love, whatever you call it, that is your source of validation and acceptance. No other human being can give that to you. So if other friends or family members do fall for whatever this person says to you by slandering your name, so be it. The truth always prevails. And then those aren't even your people. Let them go. Let them have their own opinions. You know that you are a good, kind, loving person. Do not let this person persuade you and tell you otherwise. And they are going to try. This is why so many of us have stayed in these relationships, is because they try to instill fear that everybody else is going to hate you and that you are the one that was doing something wrong. A lot of times they'll even say you're the narcissist. That's so common because it's your fear of being a narcissist that they are constantly projecting that on you. That's one of the main things that they do too, is that if you have some kind of wounding or fear, they're just constantly mirroring it back to you and using it and holding it over you. But when you are coming back into relationship with God or a higher power of your own understanding, you won't keep giving your power away to this person. And that's when you know you're really ready to release them and release these kinds of dynamics because you're loving yourself and sourcing your validation. That's literally what all of my work is really about. It's never about the other person. It's about coming back home to yourself, your relationship with your higher power, so that you can have the confidence and the courage to release anything that has power over you. So do not defend, do not argue, stay neutral, stay calm, Be willing to have them say shitty, horrible things about you. Why? Because you've already decided, you went to step one, that you are not going to stay in this relationship. The only reason why number 5 would not work for you is if you haven't decided that you are fully done. If you're still leaving the door open and you have hope and they're saying these horrible things about you, that's when it's going to affect you. When you know that you're done, you have an exit strategy, that you are going to feel some hurt and some pain from this. It doesn't freaking matter what this person says or what they think about your character or if they are slandering your name, because you are out. You are out, and there's no reeling you back in, which takes us to step 6. Keep that door closed. It's basically just a summary of all of the other steps. Do not reopen the door. No matter how lonely you get, you're going to be tempted. And you might not do this perfectly, but it's my prayer, my intention that you do. With that relationship, I kept that door closed. And it was the best thing that I ever could have done. And I remember being so proud of myself and feeling so good because I had never done that. I'd always blocked people, but I would always unblock them. It was the same thing with drinking. I would quit drinking, but then the moment where the hangover wears away or I'm not feeling pain in my body, I only think about the positive, the good times. And so I would drink again. It was the same thing with relationships. Some time would pass, the pain is gone, and I'd be like, oh my God, I remember that awesome time with that person. And oh my God, I was just being so sensitive, or I was PMSing too much. That person was actually really fun and awesome. And like, I was being too needy or too clingy. Imagine if I just did it differently. And so we want to lie to ourselves and convince ourselves that if we just do it differently, or if we did more, or we did less of, that things would change, because we think it's all our fault. We then reopen, revisit this kind of relationship, and boom, cycle, merry-go-round, forever and ever and ever. The way to break the habit, the pattern right now is this: keep the door closed and know that it's going to feel hard to keep the door closed when you want to open it. Be accepting of yourself, no matter where you're at in this stage of this process. If you were to open the door, be accepting of yourself. Don't beat yourself up for it. My relapse and my recovery was the greatest thing that happened to me. I definitely didn't think that at the time. I didn't think that again when I went back into the rooms. But why was it the greatest thing that happened to me? Because it solidified to me, that experience of my relapse solidified that nothing within me can drink. There was then no question, no doubt, no hesitation moving forward, because I had to go out and discover and learn for a fact that I had to be done. And that might be what you're experiencing with narcissistic relationships or whatever addiction you have. So don't beat yourself up if that does happen. Accept yourself, love yourself, and know that that is God's way of showing you that it's not working. God will not validate you doing those things if it's not meant to be in your life. It's going to crumble. It's going to feel like a disaster. It's going to feel like chaos. It's not going to work. It's not going to work no matter how many times you try. And after doing these steps, if you really were meant to be with this person, your higher power is going to make it happen. The other day, I was out to dinner with one of my girlfriends. I had made an amends with her. We were hanging out. We were 35 minutes away from where she lived. We were talking about her toxic ex-narcissistic relationship partner that she was in a bit ago, maybe a year prior, year and a half. 35 minutes from where we live. He walked through the door. He walked through the door of that restaurant. Anywhere in the world, at any time, could be anywhere. No coincidence. There was karma to be cleared. It was a perfect spiritual assignment lesson for her to not give him any power. He has no power. He has no hold over her. But God can bring anyone into your life at any moment, at any time, if he wanted to. If you really were meant to be with this person and you blocked them and you think they have no way of getting to you, that is an illusion. If it's in God's will, it will happen, and you don't need to force it. But if this person's not treating you right and you do not have peace of your heart, this is where you get to have the courage and take the action to close that door and do your part. If you keep it open because maybe it's meant to be and you don't want to block them from coming in, that's how you stay stuck in this perpetual cycle of abuse and toxic behavior. This is destroying your health. Whenever a client comes to me with financial issues, they come to me with weight loss issues. At the root of it, they're always in toxic narcissistic relationships, or they have some kind of pattern that's going on within them. This affects absolutely every single area of your life. You are worthy of peace and love and joy and happiness the way that your creator birthed you to be. But it's by holding on to these kind of relationships and these dynamics that keep you stuck in misery. The only way out is through. And that's going to require going through these steps, releasing these relationships, knowing that it's not always going to feel good, but you are worthy of it. So if you have anything that you want to share or something that's come up, send me a message on Instagram. If you feel like you really need more support with this, go ahead and reach out to me and see what kind of ways of working together I have, whether it's one-on-one group, a course, some kind of membership. We can see what might be the best step for you so that you don't have to do this alone. If you know somebody that might be going through this, you can direct them here and just tell them that I heard this episode and I think it might relate to you. It might not, but it's worth a listen. So thank you so much for being here. I don't take this lightly. This was the exact work and what I needed when I was struggling and suffering so much in narcissistic relationships. And now I get to really turn my pain and what I was looking for into my purpose, into my passion. And I'm just so grateful that I get to do this work and to be here. So I love you, and I look so forward to talking with you more and connecting. I'll see you in the next episode.